Imagine being one of the best golfers alive, but every time someone says your name, it's followed by, "Yeah, but he's never won a major." That was Phil Mickelson's life. 12 years of brilliance, 0 majors. And then, one Sunday in Augusta, everything changed. But to really understand that moment, you've got to go way back, to a little kid in San Diego swinging golf clubs that were almost bigger than he was. Phil didn't learn golf the normal way. His dad was right-handed, and when young Phil tried to copy him, he mirrored the motion, meaning he swung left-handed. By total accident, he created one of the most iconic swings in golf history. And this wasn't some "maybe he's good" story either. By age 3, he was already striping golf balls clean off backyard turf. His dad, a pilot, even built a mini driving range behind their house. Most kids were learning to ride a bike. Phil was learning flop shots. Now, being left-handed back then, it was like showing up to class with the wrong textbook. Clubs weren't made for you. Teachers didn't know how to coach you. But Phil didn't care. He was too busy inventing the most ridiculous, creative shots anyone had ever seen. That became his thing. Creativity. While everyone else practiced the proper way, Phil was busy defying physics. High flop shots, spin backs, trick shots that made spectators gasp. He wasn't afraid to look dumb trying. And that's exactly why he looked brilliant doing it. By high school, he was untouchable, shooting in the 60s, winning everything, and flashing that trademark grin that said, "Yeah, I'm gonna pull off this crazy shot. Watch me." Then came Arizona State University, where he didn't just dominate, he rewrote the record books. 16 collegiate wins, 3 NCAA individual titles, a US amateur. He wasn't just good for his era. He was one of the best ever. And in 1991, while still an amateur, he entered a PGA Tour event, the Northern Telecom Open, and won it. An amateur beating the pros? Unheard of. He couldn't even take the prize money, just the trophy. And the legend began. So when he turned pro, expectations went through the roof. He had the charisma, the flair, and a swing so smooth it looked like butter on slow-mo. Everyone thought he was destined to rule golf. But then, Tiger Woods showed up. Tiger didn't just win, he redefined dominance. From 1999 to 2002, 7 majors in 11 tries, he was unstoppable. And suddenly, Phil Mickelson, who would have been the face of any other golf era, was standing in the shadow of a supernova. But Phil never backed down. He was the anti-Tiger. Where Tiger was a machine, cold, precise, perfect, Phil was pure chaos wrapped in creativity. Tiger calculated, Phil felt. Watching them was like watching an artist duel an engineer. Phil would pull off shots no sane golfer would even attempt. Wedges from trees, flops over bunkers, backspins that made the ball moonwalk. And yes, sometimes it worked. Sometimes it blew up spectacularly. That mix of genius and disaster made him impossible to ignore. You couldn't look away. For years, he was the best player never to win a major. The ultimate almost legend. Then came Augusta, 2004. Sunday. 18th green. One putt to finally silence the narrative. He rolled it dead center. The ball dropped. He jumped. And just like that, the curse was over. Phil Mickelson, Masters champion. That fist pump wasn't just celebration, it was 12 years of frustration exploding into joy. His style, aggressive, creative, unorthodox, wasn't a weakness. It was his superpower. He didn't need to be Tiger to be great, he just needed to be Phil. From there, the floodgates opened. Multiple Masters, a PGA Championship, the Open. Each one proof that art can beat science when the artist believes enough. But there was still one ghost haunting him, the US Open. The only major he never won. 6 times runner-up, 6 heartbreaks. The worst? 2006, winged foot. All he needed was a par to win. One safe swing. Instead, he pulled the driver, the most Phil move possible, hooked it into the trees, hit a branch, and watched the trophy vanish. He just muttered, "I'm such an idiot." Painful? Absolutely. But that honesty, that human side, is why people loved him. He wasn't pretending to be perfect. He was us, just with God-tier talent. Even through heartbreak, Phil's popularity never dipped. Fans lined up just to watch him attempt the impossible. He'd smile, tip his hat, and joke with the crowd mid-round. The kind of charisma that made golf fun, because that's what separated him. Tiger made people respect golf. Phil made people enjoy it. By the late 2000s, he'd done what everyone said he couldn't. Hold his own in Tiger's era. 2 Masters, a PGA, 1 Open Championship, and a highlight reel of shots that looked like movie magic. But that US Open curse, still there. 1999 at Pinehurst, runner-up. 2004 at Shinnecock, runner-up. 2006 at Winged Foot, heartbreak again. Each one felt like a Greek tragedy, brilliance undone by one bold decision. Yet somehow, that's exactly what made his story irresistible. You knew that if there was a 1 in a million shot available, Phil would take it. And once in a while, he'd actually pull it off. He lived for the roar, for the gasp, for that split second when everyone thought, there's no way he's trying that. And then he did. That's the paradox of Phil Mickelson, a player talented enough to make miracles look easy, but wired in a way that made easy things hard. By 2010, he was already a Hall of Fame lock. 3 Masters wins, a PGA title, and a game that stayed defiant in an age obsessed with analytics. He was still trusting his gut, and somehow, his gut still worked. Then came Kiawah Island, 2021. He's 50 years old, the course is brutal, the wind's howling, and yet, Phil channels vintage magic. Calm, focused, brilliant. When the final putt dropped, the crowd stormed the fairway. The oldest major winner in golf history, and still Phil being Phil. That moment wasn't just about the record. It was proof that risk-taking, creativity, and passion don't expire. Phil had outlasted nearly everyone. But of course, his story didn't end there, because with Phil Mickelson, it never does. After Kiawah Island, it felt like Phil Mickelson had written the perfect ending. A 50-year-old beating the odds, defying age, and showing that golf isn't just a young man's game. But if there's one constant in Phil's career, it's that the calm never lasts long. Because right when the story looked complete, the turbulence came back. First, there was the insider trading mess in 2014. It wasn't your typical sports scandal. No cheating, no drama on the course, but $1 million profit from a stock tip that came from a gambler friend. He wasn't charged with a crime, but it made headlines everywhere. He had to repay the profits, got grilled in the media, and suddenly the smiling, fun-loving Mickelson had a shadow on his record. Still, he handled it the way only Phil could, with a grin, a shrug, and a lesson learned. Because that's his style. He doesn't pretend bad things didn't happen. He just keeps moving forward, like a golfer walking past a water hazard pretending it's not there. Then came the LIV golf explosion in 2022. If golf had a meteor moment, this was it. A brand new Saudi-funded tour appeared out of nowhere, promising players insane amounts of money to ditch the PGA Tour. We're talking hundreds of millions for some of the sport's biggest names. Golf, the gentleman's slow-moving, tradition-loving sport, suddenly turned into a billion-dollar battlefield. And who was right in the middle of the chaos? You guessed it, Phil Mickelson. He didn't just join LIV Golf, he lit the fuse. He was one of the first to publicly call out the PGA Tour, accusing it of hoarding revenue and exploiting players. He said players deserved more freedom, more say, more pay. To him, LIV wasn't just about cash. It was about control, about shaking up a system that, in his eyes, had grown stale and greedy. But then came the leak. A private interview surfaced where Phil admitted he knew exactly who he was dealing with. He called the Saudis scary, referenced their human rights record, but said he was using them as leverage to change the PGA Tour. That word, leverage, detonated like a bomb. Sponsors vanished overnight. Callaway paused their partnership. KPMG dropped him completely. Fans turned on him. Even other players publicly distanced themselves. For months, Phil disappeared from the public eye. No press, no tournaments, nothing. It was like golf's most charismatic figure had suddenly gone off-grid. When he came back, he wasn't the same loud, cheeky showman everyone remembered. He was quieter, measured, like a man who'd been punched in the gut but refused to stay down. Some saw him as a sellout, others as a rebel trying to modernize a broken system. But that's the thing about Phil Mickelson. He's always been polarizing. You either think he's a genius, or you think he's gone too far. And truthfully, he's probably a bit of both. Because if there's one thread that runs through his entire life, it's risk. He's a gambler, literally and metaphorically. On the course, he'd go for a hero shot when everyone else would lay up. Off the course, he took swings at institutions, rules, and even his own reputation. He once said, "I'm always going to play aggressive. That's who I am." And that's not just golf talk, that's Phil talk. It's who he is as a human being. He's not wired to play safe. That's why, love him or hate him, Phil's career is one of the most entertaining in sports history. 45 PGA Tour wins, 6 majors, over 25 years in the world's top 50, nearly $1 billion in earnings, and an audience that stayed hooked for decades through the highs, the lows, and every left-handed miracle in between. But numbers only tell half the story. The other half, that's emotion, that's art, that's chaos with style. He'd flash that trademark grin after an impossible up and down. He'd wink at the crowd, then pull off a shot commentators called insane. And somehow that made golf, a game of patience and precision, feel alive. While Tiger Woods defined dominance, Phil defined drama. Tiger was the machine. Phil was the magician. You watched Tiger to witness perfection. You watched Phil because you had no idea what was going to happen next. And even when controversy surrounded him, that unpredictability never disappeared. He joined Levy, became the face of rebellion, and despite all the noise, he stayed true to his identity. The gambler, the shot taker, the guy who'd rather go down swinging than play it safe. Maybe that's why his story hits so differently. Because greatness isn't just about how many trophies you lift. It's about how many times you risk dropping them to try something extraordinary. Phil Mickelson's career is full of contradictions. He could make the impossible look easy, and the easy look impossible. He could outthink geniuses and outplay legends, then blow it all with one reckless swing. But that's what makes him unforgettable. He wasn't the robotic champion built in a lab. He was human, flawed, funny, fearless. A reminder that genius often walks hand in hand with chaos. And even now, with his legacy debated and dissected, one thing's for sure. Golf wouldn't be half as fun without him. Because Phil didn't just play the game, he made it emotional. He gave it personality. Tiger may have defined the era, but Phil gave it its soul. He proved that you don't have to be perfect to be great. Sometimes the most legendary stories come from the people who dare to fail big. So yeah, Phil's legacy, messy, complicated, brilliant. Exactly like his swing. And maybe that's the whole point. Golf never needed him to be perfect. It just needed him to be Phil Mickelson. If you enjoyed this story, stick around. There's a lot more where that came from. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.